What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Now that Jurassic World Dominion's out and I've reviewed all 6 movies in the franchise, it's time to rank all 6 Jurassic Park and World movies from worst to best. So let me know in the comments what your ranking of the Jurassic Park movies are. As always, this is just my list and not a definitive ranking. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie related content on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's get to the list. Coming in at last place, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Now, I thought this movie was kind of okay the very first time I saw it, but I was rubbed the wrong way by a few things that I tried brushing off. But when I saw it again for my review, the issues I had with it got even worse for me, and my overall enjoyment went down considerably. Now, I don't outright despise this movie, like it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's a very aggravating experience. In addition to clunky dialogue, wooden deliveries, and a total lack of depth both on a story or character level, it's also frustrating because it undermines everything that was explored in all the other Jurassic Park movies, especially the first. While the original Jurassic Park is this big budget blockbuster of dinosaurs wreaking havoc, its whole point was how it was unethical to play God and interfere with nature. This movie, however, is telling us that we should be sympathetic to the idea these dinosaurs are about to go extinct again. There's a volcano that's about to erupt, and after so many people have seen firsthand the damage caused by John Hammond's cloning, this whole rescue mission is put into place in order to rescue them. And the idea we're told is that this is actually the right thing to do. And despite never actually explaining why, the film still hammers this home in a very heavy-handed way all throughout. And the only time there's any attempt at something truly emotional is this one particular plot point. But that's literally not what's at the heart of Jurassic Park. I mean, I'm not one to oppose change for the sake of it, but this is just a straight-up contradiction. And there was nothing this movie ever really said or did to justify why the reverse course. And even when it does attempt to try going a little further thematically, it still only scratches the surface, so it didn't do a lot at even attempting to gain my sympathies. And I couldn't even buy it as a mindless popcorn spectacle because of how self-serious it was and how it almost never had any fun when it got into all the usual chaos. Like, there was just no personality to this movie whatsoever, so it just ultimately felt like an emotionally hollow, soulless experience that only acts as the antithesis to the iconic first movie. Number 5, The Lost World Jurassic Park. Now, while this one does have its defenders, especially since it's the only other entry in this franchise directed by Steven Spielberg, it felt like a major step down coming off the first film. While Spielberg himself gives the movie a little extra flair with some competently shot scenes of the dinosaurs wreaking havoc, it's a much darker and self-serious movie than the first, lacking a lot of the wonder and awe that made the original movie such an emotional thrill ride. On top of that, the motivation to get a clearly traumatized Ian Malcolm back on an even more dangerous island felt a little contrived to me, and Malcolm himself appears to be stripped of all his distinct personality traits that made him such a compelling character in the first movie. And he's joined by a supporting cast filled with mostly even more uninteresting characters. Now, the film sheds a little bit of its self-seriousness in its final act when it shifts the action to San Francisco in this King Kong Godzilla style storyline. Though, while this is also the better part of the movie, it felt weirdly tacked on, as the film looks like it's wrapping things up when everyone's leaving the island, only to abruptly just then cut and keep things going for like another 25 minutes or so, and it just didn't feel like a natural progression of events. It took me out of the moment in a way that it felt like nothing really built off one another. So I don't think this is a terrible movie overall, and I know it does have its fan base, but this just did not work for me, unfortunately. Number 4, Jurassic World. And while some people generally call this the second best of all the movies, I gotta admit, I thought it was only decent and kinda underwhelming. Now, on one hand, this contains plenty of spectacle with a lot of dino destruction, and it does recapture some of that wonder and awe for a brief period of time from the first movie when we finally see John Hammond's vision come to life so many years later. And once all the dinosaurs are let loose in the second half, if all you're here for is them causing all sorts of destruction, you won't be disappointed. But on the other hand, most of this movie rang emotionally hollow, as once again, it takes itself way too seriously and you have characters who are as bland as anything leading the charge. Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard's characters have one major character trait each that just gets repeated and repeated all throughout the movie, and they have absolutely zero chemistry with one another. Instead, spewing these really clunky, poorly written lines that mostly explain to us how they felt, rather than organically showing us. So they were never characters I enjoyed following or found myself rooting for. And with that, any sense of trying to portray the carnivorous dinosaurs as these misunderstood, three-dimensional creatures never once felt believable, as most of the emotional scenes were essentially just Chris Pratt going easy, easy, and they'd reluctantly back down even though it was clear they still wanted to rip everyone to shreds at the same time. It just never felt compelling, if that's what the movie was even going for. You have some decent standouts in the supporting cast, including Vincent D'Onofrio as the villain, but it's still not fully in tune with what made the first movie so enjoyable, lacking any memorable characters or a consistent sense of fun. Now, it's sometimes fun, but it still felt disjointed overall. So while it's watchable and I don't necessarily mind the movie overall, it still misses the mark a bit for me. Number 3, Jurassic World Dominion, which sees the series go down the route every major franchise has been doing lately by bringing back the legacy characters and tugging on the nostalgia heartstrings. Now for what it was, I actually thought it was an enjoyable enough time. Now, many of the issues I have with the first two Jurassic World movies are still present here. It can still be a bit too self-serious for its own good at times. There are several logic gaps that didn't quite make any sense. The monsters of the movie are now locusts instead of dinosaurs. And when it comes to our returning Jurassic World characters, they're still pretty bland and boring, and I could have not cared less for them. And not to say that the usage of Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Sam Neill were handled the best either. In particular, Sam Neill felt like he was just there at times. But at least with them, it still felt like a heartfelt and sincere way to include them. And since they have their own subplot and we regularly cut to them, it gave us at least one actively engaging storyline here. It's definitely a bit of a stretch as far as how they got roped in, but nonetheless, it was still good to see them. And once things got going with them, I thought a little bit of that old magic that I feel has been missing returned with them. On top of that, there were some solid additions to the supporting cast, including DeWanda Wise and Mamoudou Athie, and while at times it felt like this was trying to be more of a Mission Impossible movie than a Jurassic Park movie, I still thought its action scenes were done well enough, and again added a sense of fun. It's not the smoothest ride, and I wouldn't call it anything close to the ideal way to close out this series, even though I'm sure we'll get another trilogy at some point or another down the line, but it's still made for an overall enjoyable enough time. Number 2 is Jurassic Park 3. While often regarded as the worst of the original trilogy, I actually think this is a really misunderstood and unfairly hated movie. While it's not as profound as the original film, it makes up for that with a sense of fun, opting for this to-the-point rescue mission meets monster movie style mashup, told in a very breezy 90-minute runtime. Sam Neill is once again a welcome sight as Dr. Grant, while the rest of the cast, all made up of new faces to this franchise, all felt like welcome presences, even if not quite on the levels of the iconic characters from the first film. And this actually has a surprising amount of humor thrown in there that made for a number of memorable moments, including the most meme moment in the entire Jurassic Park franchise.
Alan.
But of course, there's also no shortage of dino destruction, with the film starting in pretty quickly once our characters hit the island, and we get immediate destruction, stampedes, dino fights, and so much more, coming at just a frequent enough pace that it also doesn't feel obnoxious. It might not be as emotionally profound or as exciting as the first movie, but I still think there's plenty to appreciate. I do hope at some point it gets reevaluated, as honestly, it makes for a solid sequel. But in first place, of course, by a long shot, is the original Jurassic Park, the groundbreaking achievement by Steven Spielberg that, like most of his other films, has gone down to become a pop culture phenomenon. Everything from its characters, its score, its dialogue have all become instantly recognizable, and it all holds up so well to this day. What truly makes it work as well as it does, though, is that Spielberg finds the right mix of grand spectacle and an emotional core. While this offers plenty of thrills with all the dinosaur chase sequences, it also raises philosophical questions regarding man versus nature, while also capturing the wonder and awe of what it's like when going off on this grand new adventure and making the impossible possible. But he also finds a nice balance between the two so that the story keeps moving forward in a brisk enough manner, but he still finds ways to engage with the audience on such an emotional level without it feeling like it's bringing things to a halt. It's exciting, funny, visually stunning, and an all-around blast. I feel there's only so much that I can say about this movie that hasn't been said already, given its status as an absolute classic, so I'll just leave it at that. It's not only one of my favorite movies of all time, but it comes in as my #1 Jurassic Park movie. But let me know, what's your ranking of the Jurassic Park movies? Did you agree with this list at all? Did you disagree with it? I feel a lot of people are going to actually disagree with it, but let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it. And for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.